What's going on everybody, my name is Rico, welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are newer, my channel is about vlogs, series and tutorials. And in this episode I'm going to show you guys how to create a cinematic look in Darktable. And this is the image that we're going to use for this tutorial. It's a typical image that you'll see in a movie of a girl or a child playing an instrument or something else happening like festivities. And the first module that we're going to use is we're going to use the contrast, brightness and saturation module. There are a couple of things that we need to change. You've got three options. The first one is contrast, the second is brightness and the third one is saturation. I'm not going to touch the brightness in this image because I think it's properly exposed and we will be dropping down the exposure a little bit in a minute. I do want to change something about the contrast, so I'm going to change that first and I'm going to change it to 0.5 to add some contrast to the image. And as you can see, the image is already changing a little bit, and now I want to decrease the saturation as well. I'm going to drop it down by minus 0.2, so 0.20 to decrease the saturation of this image. I think this is a good starting point, so let me close down this module and let's continue to move on to the shadow and highlights module. You've got a couple of options over here. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to activate this module, and by doing so all these words are going to be applied to the image. And for this image I want to keep the shadows on 50% and I want to drop the highlights by let's say minus 80 I think. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, I think that looks pretty fine. You don't see any weird artifacts in the image, but you did drop down the exposure on the highlights a little bit. And another thing that I want to change is the white point. Now watch what happens if I drag it all the way to the right, like so. Now it's very bright. Now let me pull it all the way to the left and see what happens. It's a very different image. I think this is too much, so I'm going to put it on minus 8 I think. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. It's a little bit more bright than it was on minus 10. And I still got a couple of things to do, so let me close down the shadows and highlights module and let me go to the exposure module. If you don't see the modules that I'm using, it's because I've put them in my favorites, so you can get them there as well by going to more modules and then find them in a list down below. And now what I want to do is I want to change the black point. Now watch what happens if I drag it all the way to the right, which means that there is more black in the image. Now let me pull it all the way to the left. Now the black point has shifted. It's a lot more washed out. If you ask me, this is too much, so I'm going to place it somewhere around here I think. Yeah, that looks great. This looks a lot more cinematic already. I'm not quite done just yet, so let's move on to the next module, which is the local contrast module, because I want the image to pop a little bit more, and you can do so by adding more contrast. So I'm going to open up the local contrast module and I'm going to activate it. And the standard worth is 120%, and even though that already adds a little bit more punch, I'm going to place it on 150%. You see me use 150 a lot, but that's just because I just think that's the sweet spot when it comes to this module. So now everything is looking a lot more cinematic already. Imagine two black bars on top of this like you see when you're watching a movie. But we're not quite done just yet. I've got one more module to use, which is the color zones module, so let me open that one up. So the thing I want to do is I want to drop down the reds in the image and I want to preserve the skin tones. So we need to figure out where these colors are in this panel right here, and for that I'm going to use the color picker. I'm going to place the color picker on her head to see where the reds are, and the reds are located over here. So what I want to do right now is I want to move this slider just to that point, like so. And I want to drop it down a bit because we are in the saturation part of the color zones module. And now the reds have been desaturated quite a bit, but I do want to preserve her skin tones. So let me place it on her face to see where it is. So her skin tones are over here. Let me see where her cheek is, because it's a little bit more red, but she's over there. Okay, so I'm going to place it back on her skin like so. I'm going to move this slider and move it to the left and watch what happens to her face. She's got a lot more color in her face again. That looks a lot better if you ask me. You can increase this any way you like so, to give her face more color, but that means that the reds are being pulled up as well. So I'm going to drop down the reds just a little bit again, like so. And there you have it. Now let me close down the module and I'm going to take a snapshot so I can show you guys the before and I can show you guys the after. Right, so this is the original image. Now let me move this slider to the right and see what happens to the image. The reds are being desaturated. Her face got a lot more contrast. And everything else kind of stays the same. The blacks are increased, the white point has changed. And now the image looks straight out of a movie. And that's it. I hope you guys liked it. Let me know in the comment section down below. If you've got any requests for tutorials, I would love to hear them in the comment section down below as well. If you've got a picture for me to edit, please send it to this email down here as well. And I guess there's just one more thing left for me to say, which is make love to the like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Hit that bell button to be the first to be notified when I drop a new video. And until next time, doei!